Shocking truth. 4 breakfast foods over 60 should never touch, for you must eat daily for health. As the sun broke through the horizon, casting eerie shadows on the town, whispers of an unsettling discovery spread like wildfire. In a quaint little diner, known for its mouth-watering pancakes and crisp bacon, an elderly patron clutched his chest as he read the menu. Never touch oats after 40. He gasped, eyes wide with panic. It was just the start. A contingency of health experts had ignited a frenzy with their unsettling claims. The diner's neon sign flickered ominously while customers exchanged concerned looks, each bite of breakfast now veiled in dread. What breakfast item could possibly lead to heartache or worse? Suddenly, a frantic scream rang out. A woman dropped her fork, the clatter shrieking against the diner's tiled floor. "It's true," she yelled, her face pale. "If you eat those muffins, you're toast." The tension in the air surged. What dark secret did these foods hold? The locals leaned in, lips trembling, straining to hear more of this scandalous revelation. The waitress, with her apron torn at the seams, nodded gravely. She whispered, "They say too much sugar after 60 can lead to impending doom." Each word ignited more fright. Silently, patrons mused. Could the very foods they cherished be leading them to their worst nightmare? They glanced around, a sense of unease eclipsing their morning coffee. One brave soul asked, "So what should we be eating?" The crowd held its breath, hearts racing, desperate for hope amidst the rising tide of despair. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Just as the diner held its collective breath, a mysterious figure appeared at the entrance. Dressed in a tattered lab coat, he had wild hair and an unkempt beard. He was panting, and panic radiated from him like heat from a fire. "You must know what to eat daily," he shouted, slamming a tattered notebook on the counter. "Or it could cost you your life." The diner erupted into chaos. Forks clattered, coffee cups shattered, and a dark shadow loomed over the diners as they faced the mystery of their breakfast fate. Would they listen to this stranger, or were they already trapped in a web of culinary horror? The clock ticked down, and the question hung palpably in the air. What were the foods they should avoid, and which could save them? The atmosphere in the diner crackled with tension. Eyes darted from one anxious face to another as the wild-haired stranger gripped the edges of the counter. "I spent years studying this," he continued, desperation transforming his words into frantic shouting. "These breakfast foods a trap, a death sentence. You can't afford to ignore this." The waitress, noticing the unease boiling to a head, stepped closer. "Who are you?" she demanded, arms crossed, but fear crept into her expression. "What do you know?" Ignoring her, the stranger flipped open his notebook, pages crinkling like dried leaves. Listen. The muffins, the cereals, the pancakes. The ones you love the most, they're laced with dangers that compound when you hit 60. He scanned the crowd, his gaze landing on an elderly couple clutching hands. "You know what I'm talking about." Gasps erupted like popcorn, and a man at the back shouted, "What is so dangerous about pancakes?" His voice wavered, betraying the fear bubbling beneath. The stranger leaned in, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial whisper, "If you mix refined carbohydrates with sugars, you invite deadly consequences. Just one bite after the time is up, and your body's signals might betray you." Faces hardened, and the man's fork clattered again, this time in horror. "What are we supposed to eat then?" Silence. The stranger bellowed suddenly, his eyes wild with urgency. "Hear me. There are foods that can counteract this disaster. Foods that bring life rather than death. Leafy greens, berries, oats, good oats. But only if you know how to prepare them." He jabbed a finger into the notebook, ruffling through until he found a page marked with red ink. "Every bite counts after 60. Every bite." The fear turned palpable. What were they supposed to do? Could each bite they took bring them closer to death? Patrons exchanged hurried whispers, the strange weight of dozens of worried hearts pulsing in the fabric of the small diner. The waitress glanced at the old man, his face draining of color, and felt a lump rise in her throat. "I need to know," she said quietly, stepping forward. "What can we do to be safe? Please, tell us. Cut out the sugar. Raw, fresh fruits instead. Switch to whole grains. You must eat nuts." The stranger's wild eyes narrowed, and he leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. "What you eat every morning just might save your life, or it could end it." A silence hung heavier than the air before an incoming storm. Then, an ear-piercing crash echoed from the back of the diner as a shelf collapsed, sending coffee mugs scattering. The whole diner jumped, hearts pounding in sync with the chaos. Suddenly, the door swung open again, and the sunlight streamed in, illuminating a shadowy figure lingering in the doorway. "Hold on. What is going on in here?" demanded a firm voice. A health inspector tuned in with a clipboard strapped to his side. He surveyed the wrecked scene, confusion etched on his face. The stranger turned, eyes wide, panic rising anew. "You're too late. The truth is already out." And with that declaration, every patron froze, fear pulsing like a drumbeat. But was this inspector a beacon of hope or a greater threat? The diner's collective breath caught. What secrets remained buried in this breakfast catastrophe? As the inspector stepped closer, tension crackled anew, ready to buckle under the weight of hidden truths. The inspector's glare pierced through the clammy air, freezing conversations in mid-sentence. He stepped inside, the door swinging shut behind him with a heavy thud, sealing everyone inside like trapped animals. Each person in the diner held their breath, uncertainty saturating the atmosphere. "Why is everyone so tense?" he demanded, pen poised over his clipboard. "What's this about food being a death sentence?" His tone mixed skepticism with thinly masked annoyance. The wild-haired stranger, sensing urgency in the moment, burst forth, arms waving as if conducting a symphony of panic. "You don't understand. It's not just breakfast. It's everything." These foods, he gestured towards the counter where plates of pancakes and bowls of cereal lay like ticking bombs. "They could kill us." A ripple of shock swung through the diner, eyes widening as the old couple exchanged terrified glances. The man shook his head. "Is that true?" he whispered, color draining from his face. "Enough." The inspector snapped, anger boiling over. He pointed at the stranger, who seemed unreal in his intensity. "You think this is some kind of joke? People are sitting here trying to enjoy their meals, and you're spreading fear like it's nothing." At that, the waitress stepped forward, her voice faltering but resolute. "But he might be right. There are studies?" The inspector scoffed, flipping through his clipboard dismissively. "I'm here to ensure these establishments serve safe food, not entertain wild conspiracy theories." "Conspiracy?" The stranger seethed, fingers trembling as they grasped the counter. "I've seen lives ruined by these," he halted, shaking his head, taking a deep breath to contain the feeling of dread. "Listen, I know it sounds nuts, but if you keep serving this food without changes, you have no idea what chaos you're unleashing." The inspector folded his arms, the tension between them electric. Patrons shifted uneasily, restless murmurings bouncing off the diner's walls. "What does that mean?" a woman at a booth asked, her voice quaking. "Your food could betray you," the stranger shouted, eyes wide. "Look, I know it's hard to hear, but just think about your favorite breakfasts. Pancakes, don't you see? One bite too late, and it'll be too late for your body to fight back." The inspector, flustered and clearly out of his element, clenched his jaw. Time to cut it out. His eyes darted to the windows as if searching for an escape from the flaring energy. "You're causing a scene for no reason whatsoever." That's when a sharp clang erupted from the kitchen, the sound slicing through the tension. Without warning, the back door swung open, and a figure stormed out, wiping flour from their apron, eyes fixated on the crowd. It was the cook, substantial and fierce, his face a mask of fury and confusion. "What in the world is going on here?" he bellowed, brow furrowed. The stranger's eyes flickered with desperation as he pleaded, "You have to listen. They're not safe." "The cook, the chef, enough, just stop." The inspector cut him off, stepping closer to confront the stranger, chest puffed out. "You're causing hysteria." Just then, the elderly couple sat frozen, a wave of realization washing over them as they exchanged glances again. With trembling hands, The old woman pointed at the stranger. What if he is right? What if her voice cracked, leaving the thought hanging in the air, heavy and real? A silence settled, thick with dread. The patrons shifted uneasily, their anxiety morphing into a tangible, choking fear as the inspector froze, contemplating the sudden uncertainty surrounding him. Had they stumbled upon a truth that could shatter their understanding of food, health, and their very lives? Or was it all an elaborate trick spun from madness and wild theory? Suddenly, another crash from the kitchen shattered the moment. What next would come crashing down in this precarious diner? The cook's thunderous voice hung in the air, silencing the crowd. He stepped forward, his face a storm of confusion and anger. What is all this nonsense about my food? He glanced at the inspector, then back to the wild-haired stranger, who seemed poised to unleash another wave of hysteria. All I'm saying is, the stranger panted, sweat dotting his temples, you don't know what you're serving. Ingredients can be weaponized. Allergens, preservatives, they're harmful. You've got to listen. With a heavy sigh, the cook rubbed his forehead, trying to contain his frustration. You think I don't take food safety seriously? I run this place. I know what goes into every dish. He punctuated his words by pointing at the diner's iconic plate of blueberry pancakes, a staple on the menu. Just then, a high-pitched scream pierced through the diner, drawing everyone's attention toward the elderly couple. The woman's hand trembled as she dropped her fork, a glistening smear of syrup trailing down her plate. Oh my God! My stomach! I feel something's wrong. I can't breathe. Panic erupted like a wildfire. The couple's horror ignited a panic as several patrons pushed back their chairs, the noise crashing against the tiled floor like falling thunder. Call an ambulance! Someone shouted, while another echoed it in disbelief. The inspector suddenly flashed into action. Calm down. Everyone, please. Move away from her. His voice shrieked over the rising tide of distress, but his authority was lacking amidst the chaos. The old man rushed to his wife's side. Breathe, honey. Just breathe. He begged, his voice cracking. The waitress hurried over, reaching for her phone, voice trembling as she fumbled to dial. The stranger stood frozen, his face twisting in horror. This is what I warned you about. It's only going to get worse. The cook started to move toward them, but the inspector blocked his path. Get back. We need room. In that moment, he seemed less the authority and more a man terrified of what he couldn't control. The woman gasped for air, wincing. Please help as confusion swirled and panic echoed. The cook shouted, back off. Let me through. He pushed aside the inspector, his instincts as a chef kicking in. He dropped to his knees beside the woman. What did you eat? What is going on? Behind them, the atmosphere thickened with tension, every eye watching, every heart racing. The elderly man clutched his wife's hand, fear etched across his face. A mirror of every other patron's rising dread, the soft babbling noise came from the kitchen, and suddenly the door swung open again. A young dishwashing girl stumbled out, her expression one of sheer terror. Chef, it's not just her. Something's wrong with the food. It's tainted. Gasps washed through the diner, fear reverberating. The cook's eyes widened, assessing the gravity of her words. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Before she could answer, the lights began to flicker ominously, casting eerie shadows across the walls. A deep rumble echoed from outside, as if nature itself was objecting to the chaos unfolding within the diner. The stranger, now fueled by a desperate energy, turned to the patrons. You see? The truth is right in front of us. The food isn't just food anymore. It's a ticking time bomb. The cook's forehead creased with worry as adrenaline surged. You can't panic. Talk to me about what's being served. We need to trace the ingredients. Suddenly, the door swung wide open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the dim light outside. A red glow erupted in the sky behind them, alarming everyone. Get out. You have to leave. Fear gripped the diner like a vice as the inspector yelled, Everyone, stay still. Do not go outside. But questions loomed larger than fear. What had they consumed? What dangers lurked within their beloved plates? As the tension erupted, a single thought echoed through the minds of everyone present. Is there a way to unearth the truth before it's too late? The cook's heart raced as chaos engulfed the diner. His gaze darted from the panicking patrons to the still gasping woman. Was this really happening? His beloved diner, a safe haven of breakfast delights, had turned into a nightmare. "Chef, you need to look in the fridge," the dishwashing girl cried, her eyes wide with fear. "It's not just the pancakes. The other ingredients, they're all contaminated." The cook clenched his fists. Contaminated? The word echoed in his mind like a siren-esque wail. He had to act his entire life as work was at stake. Ignoring the inspector's shout to stay back, he sprang into action, bolting for the kitchen. The kitchen, usually filled with aromatic possibilities, now felt like a dark corridor leading to dread. As he swung the door open, the frantic lights flickered, heightening his anxiety. Inside, the atmosphere was thick. He scanned the shelves, the fridge, his vision jumping from bag to bag. The girl followed him, her presence a mix of anxiety and urgency. "I'll check the pantry. You look here." Their breaths sounded frantic as the cook flung open the fridge. His gut twisted. The fresh produce looked wilting, brown spots danced over the lettuce. He grabbed a container of eggs, pale and slimy. No, this couldn't be real. How could this happen? He muttered to himself, dread pooling in his stomach. Who would do this? Outside, the clamor grew louder. A patron screamed, "Ambulance! Hurry! My child can't breathe." The sound sliced through him like a knife. "Take a deep breath." The inspector barked, trying to regain control, but his authority crumbled against the tide of panic. The dishwashing girl returned, her own face gone pale. "Chef, I found something." "There's a box under the flour, looks suspicious." The cook's mind raced as he rushed back to the pantry, away from the flurry of the dining area. The girl pointed to a dusty cardboard box pushed back among the bags. "What is it?" he asked, his hands trembling as he reached for it. Dust particles floated in the air like ghosts. "I don't know, but it's labeled do not use. Just garbled markings and something about ingredients." She stepped closer, cautioning him. "It feels wrong, chef." With cautious resolve, the cook pried it open. The foul stench that wafted up was nauseating. Inside, thin packets labeled with skull and crossbones logos looked up at him mockingly. His heart raced. What kind of sick mind would do this? Then, a frantic voice broke through the horror. "They're telling us to leave. We have to evacuate now." The elderly couple's screams resurfaced in his mind. The cook knew he couldn't let fear paralyze him. "We need to warn everyone. If this has tainted the food already." As if sensing their urgency, the ground rumbled violently, sending the shelves shuddering. A loud crack echoed from outside, followed by more screams. "Get rid of that," the girl shouted, recoiling as the box trembled in his hands. "We need to focus on the people it's spreading." But he couldn't drop it, not without knowing the truth. If we can prove this was intentional, maybe we can save them. Suddenly the door slammed open again. The figure from before stepped through once more, breathless and wild-eyed. "They know. It's worse than we thought. We're in danger." Hope dimmed. The cook looked back at the girl, then at the growing crowd. They had to make a choice: stay and investigate, risking their safety, or flee and abandon the diner they loved. Whispers erupted around them. Was the food truly poisoned? Were their lives hanging in the balance? The cook's mind whirled with dread. He steadied himself, knowing a decision would come. But would it be too late? What horrors awaited them outside? The cook could feel time slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. Panic surged like a riptide, dragging him under as he glanced from the girl to the inspector and back again. They looked at him, faces painted with fear, waiting for him to decide. His heart pounded in his chest, drowning out the screams and chaos swirling outside the diner. "Trust no one," the man had shouted. "They'll do whatever it takes to cover this up." He swiped his hand across the box's contents, cheap paper crinkling under his fingers. A sickening wave washed over him. "It's real," he thought, and then out loud, "We need to warn the others." The din of panicked voices echoed against the walls, each plea growing desperate. He snapped into action, clutching the box tightly, as if its very existence held the key to unraveling the nightmare. He turned to the girl, her wide eyes reflecting the horror that gripped him. "Gather everyone in the dining room. We have to warn them," he shouted, his voice strained, a command born of fear and urgency. She nodded, hesitated, and then darted outside, yelling at patrons to leave their seats. The cook followed, clutching the wretched box against his chest, determined to expose the truth lurking inside. "Listen," he shouted, commanding the attention of confused diners. "If you've eaten anything today, You need to get outside. Now. His voice cracked, sounding more like a desperate plea than a warning. Startled faces turned toward him, confusion mingling with dread. What do you mean? A woman demanded, holding a child close. There's been contamination. He could feel the weight of their stares, their disbelief turning into a flicker of fear. If we don't act fast, a sudden crash interrupted him as a shelf fell in the kitchen, drawing the attention back to the chaos. That wasn't all. The lights flickered ominously. Outside, sirens wailed, a cacophony of panic that mirrored the discord in the diner. The cook clenched his teeth. He had to get their attention, had to make them believe him. Listen to me, he shouted again. The food might be poisoned. You have to evacuate. Panic set in. A man in the corner shouted back, is this some kind of joke? You're scaring my kids. But the cook didn't flinch. This is no joke. I found something in the pantry, it's dangerous. The crowd murmured, some exchanging nervous glances. In that moment, the dishwashing girl returned, breathless, pulling an older couple toward the exit. Go. Now, she urged, her eyes widened with fear. More screams erupted. Get out of the way. Someone shouted as a patron suddenly lunged for a door, pushing others aside. Chaos flooded the diner. The cook's heart hammered against his rib cage as people erupted from their seats, colliding, panic festering like a wildfire. He couldn't lose control, not now. Just then, the inspector rushed back, face ashen. The health department's coming. They have questions. No. The cook yelled. They'll cover this up. We have to get proof. The inspector grabbed him by the arm, shaking his head, desperation clear. We need to get everyone out. The building, it's not safe. Each sound grew louder, crashing against his senses. Hysteria was spiraling out of reach, bodies jostling like a tide. In the melee, the box slipped from the cook's grip and tumbled onto the floor, packets scattering like fallen leaves. No, he gasped, lunging down to gather them. But the crowd surged, moving past him like a relentless wave. And there it was, right at his feet, as the box flailed open. A packet split, spilling a glittering, toxic powder across the floor. People halted. Silence rippled through the chaos. Eyes widened. Could they see it? What was that? Someone gasped. The cook looked up, dread pooling in his stomach. Time's running out. We need to leave now? They might not have time to escape. But in that moment, something stopped him, the realization that all those frantic voices could easily become a stampede. And just as he raised his hand to call for calm, he saw a shadow behind the diner's door. A figure emerged, fearful but determined, carrying something glinting in the dim light. Stop. Don't let them escape. A chill shot through the cook's spine as he processed the order. Who was this? And what would happen now? Outside the diner, the sirens blared louder. But amidst the chaos, one thing became clear. It wasn't just their lives in danger anymore. The figure stepped closer, each step deliberate and heavy. The cook's mind raced. Who could be behind that door? The dim light fell on a tall man, rugged and tense, cradling what appeared to be a weapon, a glint of metal reflecting the room's erratic lighting. Get back! The cook yelled, instinctively placing himself in front of the girl, shielding her with his body. The inspector grabbed a nearby chair, lifting it slowly, ready to act. What do you want? The man didn't answer at first, his gaze surveying the crowd, as if weighing their potential resistance. You need to leave now? His voice was harsh, raw with urgency. Why? Someone shouted from the back, confusion still gripping them. You're part of this too? No. Just listen. The man shot back, frustration flaring. If you don't get out, you'll be trapped here when the authorities start their cleanup. You have seconds before they seal this place off. Panic rippled through the crowd again. But the cook could sense that concern was morphing into something even darker, paranoia. Trust had vanished, and desperation clouded every face. What do you know? The inspector demanded, stepping forward despite the cook's warning glare. He thrust the chair forward, ready to make a stand. The man's eyes narrowed. I know they're covering for someone. I saw them. Don't you get it? You think they want you safe? They will silence you. All of you. The words hung heavy in the air. The cook's heart raced even faster as shadows of realization danced in his mind. Who had the power to cover it up? Who would risk lives to save face? Stop! He shouted, raising his hands, trying to restore some semblance of order. We have to find out the truth. Together. Together? The man scoffed, glancing quickly around before lowering his voice to a whisper. Coordinate. You think that'll work? They're everywhere. Every exit is being rounded up. No one is leaving here without them knowing. From behind, someone screamed as more bodies surged toward the exit, colliding in a frenzy of terror. The cook clenched his teeth. Something had to give. Look. He pointed to the scattered packets of powder across the floor. We know something is wrong, and if we don't break this cycle now, they'll keep doing it. We need those packets. The inspector hesitated, considering the danger that the evidence held. We need to take them. We might also reveal exactly what this is. Who cares if it's real? We've got to go, the man yelled, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. The cook could see fear carved deeply into his features. Wait, he shouted, but the man was already lunging into the fray, trying to force his way to safety. As the cook watched him go, a new figure emerged from the shadows, someone clad entirely in black, moving with a predatory grace. Get in the back. The newcomer barked, pointing towards a narrow supply door. What do we do? The cook asked, heart thudding painfully against his ribs. We have to trust him. He is our only chance. The inspector looked back, uncertain. But the cook felt the pulse of desperation. Everyone in the room shared the same fear, the same need for survival. With a hurried motion, he motioned for the girl and the inspector to follow. Let us go. As they bolted towards the supply door, chaos erupted once again, but this time it was louder. People began to push and shove, their instincts blaring like sirens. The cook slipped through the door just as it slammed shut behind him, blocking out the sounds of panic. The darkness enveloped them, and for a brief moment, they were separated from the madness outside. What now? The inspector gasped, bracing against the wall. We find the truth, the cook said, his voice trembling with resolve. No more hiding. But even as the words left his lips, another sound rattled throughout the corridor, a sharp knock. Let me in, a voice whispered, urgent and wavering. The cook froze, eyes darting. Who was this? Was it friend or foe? And in that moment of uncertainty, fear dug into his gut again, the nagging question echoing in the back of his mind. What awaited them beyond that door? The cook's heart pounded in his chest, a thudding reminder of the looming danger. The whisper grew urgent, but the question remained, who was on the other side? Get ready, he hissed, panic curling in his throat. The inspector feigned bravado, hand tightening on the chair, while the girl trembled, eyes wide with fright. Let me in, the voice came again, trembling, but desperate. It was a plea that hung in the fetid air, thick with gloom. The cook looked at the inspector. What do we do? The inspector asked, glancing toward the door, a bead of sweat tracing down his temple. The cook swallowed hard. We can't leave him out there. He might be innocent. Or he could be one of them, the inspector pointed out, his voice betraying a slight quiver. Think about it. This whole place is crawling with danger. We have no idea who's on our side. The girl shivered, pressing closer to the cook. What now? Before the cook could answer, the voice spoke again, accompanied by a dull thud against the door. It was heavy, urgent. Please. There's no time. They're coming. You have to trust me. An icy chill settled over the cook, tightening his chest like a vice. He hesitated, fear mingling with a flicker of compassion. What is your name? He called through the door. Eli. Please. I'm not here to hurt you. The inspector exchanged a troubled glance with the cook. What if it's a trap? We might not have another choice, the cook replied, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily upon his shoulders. Fine, the inspector relented, still wary. But I'm ready if this goes south. He shifted his stance, ready to swing the chair in a moment's notice. The knock came again, more insistent this time. The cook stepped toward the door, trembling hands reaching for the latch. I'm going to open it, he said, his voice stronger than he felt. Wait, what if the cook turned the latch, doubt swirling in his gut? The door creaked, revealing a gaunt figure on the other side, Eli, eyes wide with urgency and fear. His clothes were torn, face streaked with dirt and terror. Quick, they're right behind me. Eli gasped. I need your help. Without another thought, the cook grabbed Eli by the arm, pulling him through the threshold just as a dull clang echoed from the other side of the hall. Close it. Close it. Eli shouted, nearly shoving the cook out of the way. They all scrambled to shut the door, and in the chaos, the inspector stumbled, the chair slipping from his grasp and crashing to the floor. Damn it, he hissed, looking back with a mix of anger and fear as the sounds of footsteps drew close. Eli met their startled eyes, fear morphing into something desperate. "You need to trust me. If we stay here, we'll be dead." "Who are they?" the cook demanded, suddenly filled with fiery urgency. "Why are they after you?" Eli glanced around, opting for a quieter approach. "They're coming to silence me for what I saw. They're covering it up. There's a whole operation. I figured it out, and now they want me gone." "What kind of operation?" The cook's voice trembled, and something deep inside told him that they were teetering on the edge of something enormous. "Drugs, trafficking, everything." Eli's face darkened. "They will kill anyone who knows. You've got to help me expose this." But the inspector scoffed, shaking his head. "And put ourselves in the crosshairs? You don't know what kind of monsters we're dealing with." Eli's eyes were wild. "Exactly. We're already in it. Together, we might have a chance." Just then, the door rattled violently, splintering as heavy boots crashed against it from the other side, the sound punctuating the urgency of the moment. "We need a plan," the cook shouted, adrenaline surging through him. "Follow me. There's a way out," Eli said, pointing down the dark corridor that snaked away from the chaos. Without waiting for more, he sprinted ahead, glancing back to gauge their reaction. "Come on," the cook urged, joining him. The inspector hung back, skepticism etching lines around his eyes. But he couldn't ignore the pounding urgency in his chest. "Let us go," he yelled, sprinting after them. Heavy footsteps echoing in the dark, the danger closing in. As they dashed into the shadows, the cook felt the weight of secrets clinging to them, wondering what other truths lurked just beyond reach and what darkness awaited them around the bend. What awaited them in that dark corridor? The corridor swallowed them whole, plunging them into a stifling darkness that pressed in from all sides. The air was thick with tension, each footfall a reminder of the danger they left behind. Eli led the way, darting around corners with a frenetic energy that made the cook's heart race even faster. "Are you sure this is safe?" the cook shouted, glancing back over his shoulder. The sounds of chaos were still close, clangs of boots on the floor echoing like impending doom. "Trust me," Eli called, his voice barely audible in the shadowy expanse. "I know where we're going. We just need to stick together." That was the crux of it, wasn't it? Trust. As they turned another corner, a flickering yellow light emerged ahead. It cut through the gloom, offering a flicker of hope or a trap. "Who are these people after you?" the inspector panted, eyes narrowed. "You haven't told us anything we can use." They skidded to a halt in front of a door, Eli's fingers working the latch frantically. "They're part of a network," he said, glancing back, the fear in his eyes growing more pronounced. "They control everything: drugs, weapons, people. Anyone who threatens their operation disappears." The cook clenched his fists, an icy dread pooling in his stomach. It was one thing to hear of such things, another entirely to be embroiled in them. "And how do we stop them?" Before Eli could respond, the door swung open, revealing a small, dimly lit room cluttered with all manner of discarded items. A wooden beam stretched across the ceiling, and water trickled down from above, forming little puddles underfoot. "This way," Eli urged, pulling them inside and shutting the door behind them just as a hammering echoed at their heels. "Do they know about this room?" the inspector asked, scanning the clutter with wary eyes. "They shouldn't at least, not yet," Eli replied, his breath ragged. "We can buy ourselves a few moments." A sudden crash resounded, the door rattling fiercely under the relentless force. "They're here," the cook gasped, voice shaking, heart pounding in sync with the frantic rhythm of the door. "Listen, if we're going to have a chance, we need to make a stand," Eli insisted, suddenly more resolute. "They can't be allowed to get what I know. If they do, we're all done for." The inspector frowned, contemplating the gravity of their situation. "You don't even know us, Eli. What guarantee do we have that you're not leading us to our doom?" "I'm risking everything to save us," Eli shot back, vulnerability flickering behind his eyes before he steeled his expression. The cook, caught in a whirlwind of thoughts, felt a surge of clarity. He owed it to himself and the girl to fight back. "Then let us figure this out. What do we have that can buy us time or victory?" In that instant, eyes darting around the room, the cook's gaze fell on a stack of old planks. An idea formed: a desperate plan, but one that might buy them the critical moments they needed. "We barricade the door. If they're coming in here, We can make it harder for them. Before anyone could protest, he and Eli lunged for the planks, dragging them toward the door. The inspector hesitated, then helped, joining their efforts to pile everything they could find against the door. The sound of pounding intensified, echoing their quickening heartbeats. Finally, they stepped back, breathless, just as their makeshift barrier thudded with another impact. Eli turned toward the cook, urgency surging once more. Now, we need to figure out how to get out of here. If we don't, they'll break through before we even know what hit us. Just as they gathered their thoughts, the sound changed, a sickening crack echoing through the room. The cook's heart sank as the door groaned under the weight of their attackers, a reminder that time was slipping through their fingers. Now what? The inspector whispered, fear etched on his features. Eli locked eyes with the cook, determination blazing within. We fight. We have to. But first, remember what I said about the operation? It goes deeper than you think. And in that moment, the atmosphere shifted as if the air grew heavier with revelation. Deeper? The cook repeated, dread flooding him. What do you mean? Before Eli could answer, the door splintered, splinters flying as the dark silhouettes of their pursuers emerged beyond the threshold. Fear gripped the cook's heart, and he couldn't help but wonder what awaited them when the truth finally came crashing down. What had Eli meant by deeper? And how far were they willing to go to uncover it? The diner's chaos reached a fever pitch as shadows poured through the doorway, cloaked figures aiming to silence the truth. The cook's hands trembled against the barricade they'd hastily constructed, and time felt fragile, every second a countdown to disaster. He exchanged glances with Eli and the inspector. Fear lined their faces, but beneath their panic lay something raw and determined. Stay together, Eli whispered, stepping forward, his eyes fierce. We'll face this head-on. The door shuddered again, thin with straining under the pressure. The cook bit his lip, racking his brain for what to do next. If we're doing this, we fight together. We don't let them take us down. Suddenly, the wood splintered. Light spilled in, distorting their shadows, making the attackers appear more monstrous. The cook's heart raced. This was it, fight or flight. Eli lunged, grabbing a broken piece of the makeshift barricade as the door gave way, crashing open to reveal the dark figures. Get back, Eli shouted, raising the plank like a weapon. In that split second, they all rushed into the light, ready to confront the danger threatening to swallow them whole. But as the figures stepped into the room, their features became clearer, revealing familiar faces. The cook's stomach knotted. This wasn't just anyone. The health inspector had brought them in. What are you doing here? The cook yelled, panic surging through him. One of the figures stepped forward, jaw set tight. We're here to protect you, but you've got to trust us. His voice was firm, unwavering. They're lying, Eli shouted back, keeping the barricade ready. They're part of this operation too. No, listen, the new figure insisted, raising his hands. We're here to bring down the true villains. The people who've been poisoning the town. Behind him, more agents emerged, armed with equipment and determination. The cook squinted, reality crashing in on him. Not enemies then, but unexpected allies in this battle against a corruption they hadn't even fully realized. What is going on? The inspector croaked, eyes darting between Eli and the newcomers. There's so much more at stake than breakfast, Eli explained, his voice trembling under the weight of his fear and urgency. It's not just food. They're covering up trafficking and drug operations. It's all connected. Just then, the shadows retreated as agents took control, swiftly pushing the cloaked figures back, cornering them with evidence the cook could scarcely comprehend. Proof is key, one agent announced, tossing down packets filled with the same toxic powder that had nearly swept them into despair. The diner's food, the health hazards, it's all been manipulated. You've stumbled on a bigger plot. The cook's head spun as adrenaline crashed through him like a riptide. What do we do now? Now, we expose them, an agent said, shooting a glance at Eli. We need witnesses, testimonies. You have to stand with us. Together, we reveal the truth, or we lose everything. The cook felt the weight of their situation like iron pressing on his chest, yet hope flickered like a candle in an unexpected storm. If we stand together, we take them down. No more hiding. Exactly, Eli said, stepping beside the cook, fire igniting in his eyes. No one else will be hurt because we stayed silent. As footsteps echoed from the corridor, The cook squared his shoulders, resisting fear. Agents began organizing the crowd, shouting orders with urgency. The inspector, eyes wide, finally nodded. I'll help. I didn't realize it went this deep. You were right. The cook felt a rush of unexpected responsibility. We can do this. Even if it feels impossible, we owe it to the town. Hope collided with determination. They formed a line, both patrons and agents, everyone ready to fight against the tide of deception. As they moved toward the chaos, the diner's walls no longer felt like a prison. They were mobilizing for justice, ready to unveil the truth hiding in plain sight. And as they stepped out into the blinding light, the weight of secrecy lifted, revealing a clear path forward, a path they would walk. Together, united against the darkness that had threatened to swallow them whole. Together, determined and defiant, they became an unstoppable force, echoing with every step the message that they were now far more than mere diners. They were warriors for truth, healing, and courage, ready to reclaim their lives from those who hid behind shadows. The battle was only beginning, but as they faced the world outside that diner, they knew one thing. They would emerge stronger, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had been silenced for too long. Now let us keep this momentum going. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our upcoming exclusive stories that will blow your mind. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more people. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters more than ever.